All right, well, Senate is now in session. Just a reminder, the way we will do this is for motions, please raise your hand, or to ask questions, raise your hand. And then in voting, vote yes if it's a yes, no if it's a no, or the coffee cup, which you can find under more if you are abstaining. So I saw, Brian, you raised your finger there. Is that your motion to approve the minutes?
Yeah, approve the minutes, and I would also like to commend Melissa for the minutes, because I don't know how you did minutes in this Zoom way, but they were incredible.
Well, I will say, just as a spoiler there, that we also got she got for the first time, right, an exact transcript of the entire thing. Wasn't the entire thing transcripted?
Well, I mean, exact is
Not exact.
it did help a little bit though for a few things.
Well, that's good. Michael Stanfill, were you seconding that?
I am indeed.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion or corrections for the minutes from last week? All right, all those in favor, please vote yes. All those opposed, please vote no. All those abstaining, please show us your coffee cup. Michael Parker, as you just joined us, we are voting on the minutes for
We
last
do not have a vote from Prakash.
week. All right.
Or Justin.
Justin Harmon, are you?
Are you abstaining?
What button do I push to vote?
You vote yes, no, or the coffee cup.
Oh, I don't see any of those.
Click on
you click on
participants.
participants.
Oh, I see.
And then Prakash may be in the same situation. Prakash, if you don't see your way to vote, you can click on participants to see that. But I guess we could, if Prakash, maybe he's out of the room.
Okay, so I will put, I'll just put no vote. Prakash and Justin, I think, clicked on to yes, right? Yep. Okay, so I have you and me abstaining, and everybody else voting yes, and no vote from Prakash.
All right, great. I have, oops. Someone just showed up and then I went away. Okay, next up we have President Schott's report. There she is. Let's see.
Good afternoon, everybody. I don't know what we could possibly have to talk about. Probably find something. I'm going to start with a couple of smaller items and then work our way up to last Friday's announcement. I wanted to let you know, and perhaps Provost Walsh is going to mention this as well. Sorry to steal your thunder, Sue. The Tuition Advisory Council has been working, and last Friday, Sue sent me their recommendation for a tuition increase for this coming year. They recommended it anywhere below 4.99%. As you know, 5% or above triggers us going before the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. They were clear that they're giving me some freedom in that. I feel like, you know, that I have bravely gone before the heck in prior years to advocate for higher tuition. I do not feel that this is the year to do that. Primarily because we know that our students and their families are being impacted by this pandemic and the economic recession / verging to depression. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to recommend, but I think it'll probably be even lower than 4.99%. But I do that with knowledge that that will make our budget issues even worse, unless it helps with enrollment, in which case, you know, it's a good decision. But I think regardless, it's the right thing to do for students and families at this point. So I'll be weighing all that and happy to hear your thoughts on it. But I think for one thing, it would be highly, we would be criticized soundly if we came out with even a 4.9% tuition increase, because while we think of that as low, I think it sounds high to many people. So I'm thinking we will end up somewhere closer to around 3%, but I haven't made a permanent final decision on that. We have begun talking about the reopening process. There's a lot of great work being done by all of the Oregon Public Universities. Vice President Neil Wolf has been a big part of that broader conversation, and he and Vice President Fratello are leading that work here on our campus. They just about have the slides finalized. It may be finalized at this point. I think when you see those, you'll see that they've done some really amazing work thinking about how we can move through this process with the state, with our region, with our county, and try to keep everybody safe and yet lead us to a resumption of on-class operations by September, possibly a little bit sooner. So stay tuned to that. And then finally, Andrew asked me to talk a little bit about the announcement I made on Friday. This is such a rapidly evolving situation. And so I went back to look at some of the dates. We had said that we had too many unknowns as spring term started. We needed to wait to see what enrollment was going to look like. And that wasn't stabilized until after add drops ended. So around April 20th is when we began to get a sense of what spring term enrollment would be, and that it was down about 7%. We were also waiting to see what we would learn about the federal relief money coming in from the CARES Act. We thought we were getting about 3.4 million. We finally got verification of that. And that 1.7 million of that has to go directly to students as a direct pass through the university. So none of that, while it helps our students, and it's very important for that reason, and while it helps them stay enrolled and hopefully return next fall, it does not more directly address our financial problems. The other 1.7 million is for the institution, and we are right now this week in the process of figuring out how to best utilize that, strategically utilize that. At the end of that week, on April 24th, was the first notification we had from the state of what the budget reductions for the coming year might be. It was the first time. So I have a meeting with my vice presidents on Friday afternoon late. And when Greg Perkinson walked in, he carried the news that we were looking at a 8.5% reduction for the biennium. But since 1 year of the biennium was already gone, it was a 17% reduction in the coming fiscal year. It wasn't clear exactly how that would be determined, but fortunately for us in this case, they decided to run it through the funding model. So while we get underfunded when money comes our way, it also meant that the reductions were a bit less because of going through the funding model. So that equated to 3.1 million. So we began to have some certainty around what was facing us. And it was also on that Friday, April 24th, that we heard the first inklings of a program called the Oregon Workshare Program. It sounded very promising because it would allow SOU to keep our employees largely financially whole, maybe even benefit our employees in the short run, and yet allow SOU not to have to pay the full extent of unemployment. So we began exploring that program. HR started working on that over the weekend. We were making good progress with a planned implementation of June 1st. And then on Wednesday, April 29th, Jason Katz directed us to an attorney that he knows had a great deal of experience with this program. We had a good consultation with her, and she said, jump on this immediately. Do it as quickly as you can, because the federal unemployment benefit is going to layer on top of this, and it will give your employees $600 more a week. The sooner you can get it to them, the better. So that's why we moved so quickly. It was all about, we could make our employees wait, not furlough people for another month, but then there would only be June and July of the federal unemployment benefit. So by moving more quickly, employees can get that federal unemployment benefit for the month of May, as well as June and July. So that's really why we moved so quickly, because we felt like it would be of the greatest benefit to our employees. We worked very quickly with SEIU leadership because they had to sign and apply for the Oregon Work Share program with us. And they were great to work with. We met late into the night and were able to negotiate a letter of agreement that they believe benefits their employees. We believe benefits their members and our employees. Sorry. So I'll stop there and see what questions you have.
We have time for just a couple questions. We are on a tight schedule today. Brian?
Hi, Linda. So the 1.7 million that's been allocated directly for the students, how is that? How are the students getting that, if you will?
Yeah, great question, Brian. We started a week ago on Monday with a very simple application process. I think it's only like 4 questions. It was sent out to all eligible students. So as you may know, if you followed the news, at first it sounded like we were going to be able to use it for any students, and then the Department of Education issued additional guidance, thank you very much, that limited it to students who had filed a FAFSA and were eligible for federal financial aid. So that excluded DACA students and international students. We were not happy about that, but we have to go by Department of Education guidance. So once we got that, we sent out the application to all eligible students. I haven't seen the latest numbers, but within a few hours, we had gotten several hundred responses back. Initially, we're limiting the award to $1,000 each student because we can use this money again in the fall. We have up to a year to disperse this money to students, but we are being sensitive. If there are students who come forward and demonstrate a much greater need than that, then we can give them a larger amount.
Brittany, you have a question? Brittany?
Yes, I do. Sorry, I like unmuted myself and then muted myself. My bad. I wanted to clarify because now that you just said that I'm actually searching through my email, I don't believe I personally filled it out and asked for some funds for rent. But basically, it was sent out to resource centers by like coordinators to like take advantage of it. So I'm wondering if maybe certain programs or clubs have sent it out when students who weren't eligible didn't get that initial thing. And I'm wondering if maybe we need to clarify that, because I feel bad now that if I didn't get the initial email because I'm not actually eligible for it, but I filled it out because it came to me in a different outlet. I'm wondering now, what if we have potentially skewed some of those numbers asking? I work for the federal government, so I don't want to break any federal laws. by having us allocate. Brian's laughing because I could lose my job.
Brittany, I think, I don't know the details of this. Vice President Wolf would be the one to ask for the details on it. I'm pretty sure that even if you applied, we would not give it to you if we did not know that you were eligible. And we have that information. But it'd be better to take that question, I think, directly to Vice President Wolf or to Kristen in financial aid. Sue, do you have any more recollection of how that process is working? We won't let you go to jail, Brittany.
Oh, thank God. Thank you. I think it's okay as long as you guys can do that second check, but there might be some students who might need that clarification then of why they're not eligible. Perhaps my guess is if you qualify for the parental funding for FAFSA and your parents make a certain amount, you might be disqualified for that. That would be my guess. I'm trying to think of why I on earth would be disqualified. But I'll reach out to Neil and get better clarification, and maybe we can reach out to some of the students who might be confused.
Sure, we'll be happy to do whatever we need to do to clarify that, Brittany. Our interest is in getting the money out to the students. I mean, we don't get any benefit from holding on to it, so we want any eligible student who needs it to get it.
All right. I know we have a couple more questions. We are 7 minutes behind, so try to be quick with your questions, please. Chad?
In regards to tuition, I was wondering if you had a sense of what other institutions in Oregon are doing.
Sue might have that information.
If I can unmute Sue. I'm trying to unmute Sue, but Sue's not unmuting.
Sue, I think you have to also unmute yourself.
How's that?
Okay.
Good. University of Oregon is doing a flat no increase for existing students and 3% for new students. That's undergraduate. Oregon State is doing something similar to that. The other institutions are still in conversations and making decisions with their tuition advisory councils. We lost some time. All the institutions lost time with the extra week at spring break, so we're all a little behind.
All right. Thank you. Last question goes to Kimball.
Thank you. My question is for President Schott, and I guess I know there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of unknowns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I just hope that we're keeping up our fight to get a fairer funding model, because I would hate for that to become a you know what I'm trying to say, a casualty of
No, absolutely, Kimball. I'm right there with you. We are now at the stage of pressing on the governor's office. So we've had advocates from across, the region, the people that we believe have influence with the governor, calling her office. It's just a continuing, ongoing process. But I absolutely, I won't give up hope on that until they either fire me or just tell me I can't, and they can't fire me. Only the board can do that. So, and the board wants the assistance as much as we do. So we'll just keep pressing on that. And we had a really good meeting. I may have talked about that last time with Ben Cannon and Jim Pinkard agreeing on data. So that's a step forward, at least agreeing on our basic understanding of the facts. So yes, we can continue to push.
Thank you, Linda. All right, Sue, you're up next. Oh, you'll need to unmute yourself, Sue.
This is so confusing.
I don't know why I said.
Just quickly, I wanted to just let people know that when Vice President Wolf gets the sort of plan blessed with the HEC, and that's in conjunction with all the other universities. So this is a big group, an umbrella group at the state level, working with the governor's office, and then each campus has its own implementation groups. I will make that information available to the chairs and directors, and Neil has agreed to come in and talk through the planning so that everybody in those roles has some idea of what the planning conversations sound like. Then the second quick thing is I'm going to provide professional development for faculty around hybrid and other kinds of course delivery, where Clay and Jody and Kristen and Chris and I have met, and we're talking about ways in which we can get faculty some really much needed professional development around some of these different delivery methods. We did a quick thing over spring break, and it was a mighty effort, but we need to go back now and take a look at the pedagogy, the assessment, and really provide some good professional development opportunities. So more on that to come. I hope that you'll take advantage of those opportunities. One quick thing, INL students are doing a survey of faculty about the remote experience, and we're talking about doing a survey of students, and I'm going to be reaching out to Brittany so that we can get some sense of what the experience from the students' point of view and the faculty point of view might teach us. So more on that as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stu. I'm gonna ask everyone to hold questions for Stu for now as we go to Brittany. Just try to make up some time.
Yeah, so student government, we haven't had a ton of stuff. My vice president is working on elections right now, and that's basically a large thing we have going. More on the side of, because our Senate hasn't had a lot to meet about. Personally, I have been meeting a lot with all of the Oregon presidents, and we've tried to bring in Arizona schools as well as California schools to just have a conversation about what each school is doing at this time, and almost like learn from each other of what we can be doing to help students. I think it's going good. Honestly, a really big concern that a lot of us have realized in the past week that I would love to share with you all is faculty, because I think you have a direct connection with your students right now. And I would love for you to show in any way in your classes that support. A lot of us at the resource centers and those who run programs on campus are noticing a very lack of connection to students. Like a lot of students are not showing up to events or getting involved or even just contacting folks if they need help. I don't know if Taylor Burke is in this, but I know Taylor Burke has told me that we have 12 different support groups set up for this, but a lot of students are not showing up to it. I know our SAU CARES reports are, I'm not sure if they're exactly low, but in a time like this, I think you would expect them to increase, right? And we're not seeing that. And I wouldn't say that anyone's mental health is getting better. So I think we should be really concerned with really connecting with our students at this time, because I think a lot of folks feel really isolated and feel like they do not have that connection. So I would just encourage you to really support your students of come to my office hours, talk to me, reach out to me if you need it, or try to go to an event for one of the programs. A lot of us are doing remote events. Encourage your students to come stay connected. I think this is where right now we need our campus life to really be trying to get students to get involved, because we want them to know that they're still here, we're still connected, and they still have support. But we're really not hearing anything, and that's what a lot of us are getting concerned about. So I just want to put that on your radar. I think other than that, we're just, honestly, every student is just trying to adjust at this point. Be lenient on your students. It's really hard to stay focused at this time, and it just feels really odd at a time like this. The days are going by really quick. Time is moving really quick, and I'm sure you're also feeling that. But for a student, it all feels a lot right now. So from what I've heard, a lot of teachers are being really, really great, being understanding and doing a great job at that. So thank you for that, and just keep that up as we finish this term out and go into midterms. Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. Any quick questions for Brittany on that note? All right, thanks, Brittany. Next up is Kimball.
Well, hello, everybody. I've got several things I want to mention. First, directly on the report of the advisory council meeting last week. The primary thing that we discussed that is not already reflected in today's agenda was kind of a trial balloon, if you will, by the University Studies Reform Group. I'm sorry, I just didn't use the right words. But anyhow, we discussed on the advisory council the possibility of making one sort of big change to university studies, even as early as potentially this fall. And of course, this would have had to go through Senate and everything too. But the idea was that maybe we should just reduce the number of E, F, and G strand credits from, I think it, well, courses, let's put it that way, courses from 3 to 2. And the thought at the time was go big, maybe do it just right away and for all catalogs and everything. That's what was brought to our group to discuss. In addition to our usual folks, which is the advisory council, plus the president, plus the provost, we also had Karen Stone at that discussion. Trying to bring this down to just the nuts and bolts of it, I think there was enough concern by many of us, certainly I would include myself in that, that the effect on enrollments might be negative. And that isn't a reason enough alone to not make a change, but it felt like weighing all of the factors and all of what we're all dealing with, that maybe that it just wasn't the right time to do that. So we kind of made that general person's agreement, but I wanted you to be aware that that got as far as the advisory council and we didn't bring it forward to you. Also at the advisory council, we discussed a couple things regarding elections, and I'm going to bring you up to speed on elections. So speaking on behalf of April and Melissa, we are robustly gathering nominations for all open Senate seats, and a couple of interesting quirks there. One is there are no at-large seats open this year, so this will be it. We will be gathering nominations this week and running elections next week. Let's see, I guess I'm gonna go ahead and categorize this as an announcement. You all empowered us, you may not remember this, but you did, to adjust terms in Senate to get people off of the stack. For example, STEM is notable in that if things were to proceed normally, we would replace all 3 STEM senators this year for 3-year terms. We're trying to get these, when we have 2 and 3 seats in a division, to get them staggered. So that's one example. We're gonna have 2 3-year terms and 1 2-year term. But the one we just decided was in OCA, where I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, Cynthia Hutton will be resigning her seat at the end of this school year, and we're going to run that for, what did we say, Melissa, a 3-year term instead of just finishing out a 1 year. So we're doing some of those adjustments. And then one last thing I want to say, and it's just kind of to speak to the general ethos of what's going on. And the president spoke to how quickly the timeline was in terms of some of the decisions made. One thing that wasn't immediately clear to faculty was that whether we were included in the 20% furlough, and the answer is no, we were not. If you're an APSU member, you're not yet subject to anything like that. But just so you're aware, the university and APSU have agreed to negotiate several items, and it's very likely that something along these lines might come our way. This isn't the place to run an APSU information meeting, but I just wanted you to know that the first that the faculty leadership all around really heard of this was Thursday and then Friday morning. And that's not a criticism, it's just a fact. So, we're adjusting to this reality, and we're in the union certainly going to have to listen to some of the cold hard facts about the budgetary situation the university is in. I think that's all I have.
All right, thanks. Any questions for Kimball? All right. I'm pleased now to welcome a guest. Kelly from admissions has been invited in. I might have unmuted you and then you muted yourself accidentally. There you go. We've invited Kelly to come in because I imagine many of you are wondering exactly what we're doing virtually to continue to bring students in. So let me, while Kelly sort of tees us up here, I'm going to make it so that she can share her screen.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that works. Are you able to share your screen now? Oh, you muted yourself again.
I got it. Okay. Let's try to share now, see what I can do here. I believe I'm good. Okay. And I'm going to share my computer audio with you as well. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for carving out some time for me today. And for those of you that happened to be at the Board of Trustee meeting where I shared some of this, I apologize for having to share it yet again with you, but I hopefully will supply you with some additional pieces that I didn't share there to bring you up to date. I think I know most of you, and for those of you who may not know me, I'm Kelly Mount-Satson, Director of Admissions. And naturally, this is the time of year where many are deciding if and where they plan to go to college. But because of COVID-19, making that choice has become a heck of a lot more complicated, right? So many campuses, you know, obviously shutting down. Some of the whole mainstays of what the college admission process actually looks like has changed drastically, from campus visits to standardized testing to obtaining transcripts and a myriad of other setbacks, right? So naturally, not only are students scrambling, but universities as well, of how to stay ahead of the curve with this constantly evolving and rapidly changing environment. So hopefully this will advance. Yikes. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna go back one. All right, so each and every one of us is now living and experiencing the current landscape. So today we're just gonna quickly take a look at how the Office of Admissions has quickly adapted and what our plans are moving forward. I'm starting out with a quote here. I put this here just to kind of talk about SOU's mission as well, and that is that we commit to being the educational provider of choice for learners throughout their lives. We inspire curiosity and creativity, compel critical thinking, foster discovery, and cultivate bold ideas and action. And the current conditions that we are all living in right now require more of that type of commitment than ever. So we've got to be innovative, and we have to take action now rather than waiting to follow what others are doing. And in response to the rapidly changing environment, our office has done just that. We know that prospective students are facing and will continue to face many challenges in the weeks to come. So how do we help mitigate some of that? How do we do the best possible job we can to meet students where they are? And I'm really proud of the team that we have in the Office of Admissions, but also all of our campus partners as we've been pulling together to be innovative in our thinking and find creative solutions to the many challenges we've been presented, and to collaborate in doing what's best for our current and our incoming students. So one of the very first things our team did was to build a new web page as a depository of information so that students and guests could quickly seek out the answers that they need, with cancellation of campus visitations, on-campus and off-campus events, admitted receptions, and all other in-person outreach we typically provide at this time of year. We knew that we needed to be ready with virtual events at lightning speed. So I'm just going to click into the website. Here you'll see that we've neatly organized all of our virtual information, events, sessions, meet your counselor, video chats, virtual campus tours, and virtual events like our Raider receptions. And the very first message we put out happened during the first week of campus closure following the stay-home orders, was a message to high school seniors nervous about not being able to complete their studies. You know, what would that look like for them? Announcements regarding the cancellation of standardized tests. You know, what about deposit and decision deadlines? So many questions, followed with an abundance of confusion. So this announcement, I'm just going to share a very short clip of it, was created to alleviate some of those concerns. Greetings, my name is Kelly Mount-Satson and I am the Director of Admissions at Southern Oregon University. During this challenging time, SOU has been working hard to meet the needs of our students, faculty, and staff, while also following best practices for the health of the community at large. Okay, and you can find that full video on our page at sou.edu admissions, and also on all of our social media platforms. One of the greatest tools is being able to get in front of our students, parents, and counselors with face-to-face interaction. And then the coronavirus changed that completely. We knew that we needed to do more than just limit ourselves to email and print and television and social media. And despite how we all might feel as regular users of Zoom now, these virtual tours have really created us with an opportunity. We've developed a series of weekly Zoom information sessions, and invitations continue to roll out to every recruit and applicant within our database. We also added this information to our webpage where interested parties could sign up for a session. And during the first session we had, representatives from housing joined us, and for the second session, we had Kevin from the VRC join us. And we always have at least 2 Raider ambassadors on every single session, just to make sure that students are getting, you know, that communication and contact with other students, our current students. So with a curious mind, you might simply just click on one of these little sign-ups. I'm going to show you what that looks like. And we're not launching. So irritating. All right, we'll try one more time. I don't think it's going to launch. That's a bummer. Okay, well, this is actually a recording of the live session that we held last week with Ian Parent, my Associate Director of Admissions. And it was really great. Naturally, there's going to be a lot of issues that take place, as many of you may have been experiencing yourselves. We're all, vulnerable to some of the things that can happen with technology, right? So in Ian's session, he actually lost internet connectivity, and these things happen. Because I was able to monitor it, I was able to quickly jump in, take over the session, introduce myself, and then I had the 2 ambassadors on the call introduce themselves, and they shared where they're from, why they chose SOU, and they started answering questions. And some of our viewers were posing these questions in the chat session, as you can see here. I apologize that it's blurry. It's just a screenshot, but I don't think there's anyone out there that doesn't understand the potential for technical difficulties, but I was really pleased to see that not one of the prospective students that had signed up for this session left. They all stayed there and stuck it out until Ian was able to rejoin and continue on with his presentation. Each and every admissions counselor has an assigned territory. For example, let's say I am a student from Sacramento and I want to make an appointment to talk to an admissions counselor. The wait time to actually make that happen at some institutions might be lengthy as they wait to, have messages forwarded. We didn't want to add any extra hoops for students to have to jump through, so now they can choose to schedule an appointment with an admissions counselor. I'm going to take you to that next screen. So again, let's say I'm a prospective student from Sacramento. I can see here that Alana Jackson is my admissions counselor, so I'd click on this little link here, schedule a video chat. And then that would take me to picking a time. And let's say I want to sign up, even though this is in the past, the current one takes you to current available dates. But let's say I wanted to sign up for a date on Alana's calendar. Because I haven't updated it, it's not showing you here, but let's see if it'll take me into next week. There you go. So now I can see that, hey, on the 8th, I can have a 9 o'clock appointment with Alana. It's going to confirm my booking. I'm going to confirm I'm not a robot, and that's it. Now the student gets a confirmation with all of the Zoom details. The admissions counselor gets a reminder that that slot has been taken on their calendar, and this is an awesome feature. I will keep this in place moving forward. So we're doing all these great things, to really try to stay ahead of the curve. We're meeting with students on a regular basis and virtually sharing all of the wonderful things that make SOU such a unique and truly wonderful place to learn. So how do we ensure that our students are able to reach out to us and vice versa? Despite the fact that we are in the process of sunsetting our current CRM that manages all of our inbound and outbound messaging to students, and look forward to all the incredible features that our new CRM will offer with the enhanced and more user-friendly application, we're still sending personalized emails and responding to each and every student. So I want to assure you of that. And with the help from Tom in IT, we were able to equip the recruitment staff with Zoom phone numbers. So this way they're not using their cell phone numbers. They can make a call anywhere without having to use a long distance code, and students can return calls to that same phone number. There's also a voicemail feature there as well, so they can leave messages for the admissions counselor if they're calling during off hours. We also started this admissions blog. It includes weekly highlights. I'll take you to the live version of it. Weekly highlights that our students update down here with blog entries, but they can also explore, a little bit more about our admissions staff, a little bit more about who our Rater ambassadors are. So that's yet another way that we're keeping in contact with our prospective students, our admitted students, and our confirmed students. And then on social media, we are mirroring everything that we're doing. So this will take me to any one of those live sections. I'll start here with Facebook and just end there. All of our virtual connections are listed here, and we've got live events happening on each and every one of these platforms, and I'll discuss that in a quick moment. So yeah, everything that you've seen so far, we're mirroring that. Okay, so just a quick recap. It lists some of the things that we've done, some of the new tools we've implemented: our virtual campus connections page, live information sessions with the admissions counselor, our use of RockyBot, and for those of you who may not be familiar with that term, that's our artificial intelligence. That's our RockyBot is there to text out important updates and share other types of information with students. He's been well versed in all things with COVID-19 updates. We've also have in place the face-to-face meetings now with Zoom with calendar feature. For inbound and outbound calls, we've got the Zoom phones, as I mentioned. And some of the things I want to share with you today are other events we've been working on and now have completed, like Rater receptions that go through next steps and encourage students to commit to attending SOU. So here's a sample of what our Raider receptions look like. I'm beyond proud of this, just because we did this in less than 2 weeks. I'm not going to take you through the whole thing, but gosh, it would really be unfortunate if I can't get you there today. Let's try this right here. Okay, so this is what a student receives. If there are any students who's an admitted student, they're going to get this. It's normally we'd be doing these on the road, but we created virtual Raider receptions. And I'm really proud to tell you that we've reached more students right now who have gone through this Raider reception than students we would have met on the road. That's amazing to me. And that's just in 3 days. So I'm going to enter as a guest real quick and just quickly show you kind of what features are included here. It walks a student through, congratulations, obviously, what they can expect through this Raider reception. This is different than Raider registration, obviously, but a great segue to it. Congratulating them on being admitted to SOU. That's what receptions are all about. They're congratulatory events. And then there's a nice little welcome. We give them some updates on, how things have changed from the admissions standpoint. And then I believe next it's a welcome from Neil. And then we walk into all of the next steps, topics we're going to be covering by our associate director. He did a great job. He brought his drone on campus. I'm just going to give you a snippet of this. Hopefully it'll play.
Hi there. Welcome to our Raider reception event. My name is Ian Parent and I'm the Associate Director of Admission. On behalf of the university, congratulations on your admission and welcome to the Raider family. Raider reception is meant to be a...
All right, so I'm going to quickly cheat and go to the end of that. And then I'll just share with you, there's other things like on next steps, what to do next, how to confirm our, the intent to enroll, how to sign up for housing and dining, how to participate in student life and recreation. And there's some wonderful videos here, by students. We've got a great piece by our recreation center. Here's financial aid. Kristen Gass covers all the next steps for financial aid. Then if a student wants to explore even more, they have all of these wonderful path forks, they're called. So let's say you're somebody who will be in the Honors College. Here's a message from Dr. Lyon. Or if you're interested in transferring, there's a message for how to transfer. Student testimonials, alumni success. We've got a message from Kevin from Veterans Resource Center. There's disability resource information, including a version in Spanish. If you're a WUI student, and the list goes on. So I'm beyond proud of the work that this campus has done to help bring these to life. I think that students are really going to get a lot more out of this by hearing directly from folks across campus. So again, I can't say enough how pleased I am and to hear from students that they're really getting a lot of valuable information. And as of today, all of the invitations went out for Raider registration. So this was a great introduction to that. And we'll keep these rolling, encouraging students to deposit. So I'm going to go back to this. I mentioned earlier we have these creative events on social media. Take a look at what Miranda, one of our admissions counselors, does. This is an Ask Me Anything talk on Instagram.
Hi everyone, my name is Miranda. I'm an admission counselor at SOU. I'm going to be doing an Ask Me Anything here on Instagram. So if you have any questions along the way, I'd be happy to answer them. I'm going to be doing this all day long. So think of some questions, but I'll also include some of the most popular ones as well. So one of the most popular questions I get obviously is how do I apply and what do I need to do? So I included a little step-by-step list and it's going to be the next post. So if you want to screenshot that, I would encourage you to.
I'm going to quickly skip through this. There's more, but we do a student version of this as well. And here's Kayla.
Hi everyone, my name is Kayla Hunter and welcome to this week's SOU Admissions Instagram Takeover. I'm a graduating senior here at SOU. I'll be graduating in the spring. My major is in digital cinema and I have a minor in criminal justice. I'm excited to be spending the day with you guys.
So, viewers can ask questions and they do, and then they're answered on the spot.
I've been getting some questions about my major. I'm a digital cinema major, so I like to make films and movies and write scripts and stuff like that. My specific focus is in screenwriting and directing.
Okay, I'm going to pause her. Here is a Raider Ambassador-led tour. In addition to our 360-degree virtual tours that we offer, the Raider Ambassadors wanted to keep up by doing these live events weekly. They happen every Friday while we're waiting for this to load. And yes, they even walk backwards just like they would do if they were leading a group on campus. So they do the full tour. Typically, these are roommates that live together. One's filming, asking questions as they're asked, over Facebook Live or through Instagram. And then the Raider Ambassador answers those questions. I'm sure it's because we have so many on this call that unfortunately my videos are not playing. It's unfortunate, but you can see all of these on Facebook or Instagram. Not only are they live at the time, but then the recorded version of them play throughout, folks can watch them at their leisure. But the ambassadors have done a really great job with continuing our person-to-person tour as best we can keep it. I'm going to go ahead and skip it rather than making y'all wait. So that's what I've got. Our office is obviously very committed to each and every student. We promise to continue to work tirelessly to bring each and every student to campus this fall, and we'll continue to be innovative. Thanks for your time. I look forward to sharing updates with you as they become available. And I don't know if there's time for questions, Andrew, or not, because I wasn't sure how much time I actually had.
Yeah, we're out of time right now, but people can, if you want to send me questions either in the chat or via email, I can pass on questions to Kelly later.
Yeah, please
We are a little behind schedule right now. Thank you, Kelly, so much for that
Thank
presentation.
you.
I think it's really helpful to kind of know what's going on.
Thanks for having me.
Time today.
Thanks.
All right, so on our next agenda item, we have the new bylaws waiver proposal, the use of spring evals and summer, actually. So I have, well, Brian has already raised his hand, so let me ask Brian, is that a motion to?
Yes.
Yes.
I would like a motion to pass the use of spring teaching evals and tenure promotion applications.
All right. I believe Lori is seconding over there. Thank you, Lori. Any further discussion on the language of the waiver of student evaluation bylaws for spring and summer evaluations? Again, that language is in the drive. Don't see any questions right now. So all those in favor of passing the resolution, please indicate so by saying yes. If you're opposed, please vote no. And if you choose to abstain, please vote with your coffee cup. And Melissa, let me unmute you so you can tell me when you have your vote.
I see no abstentions except for you, and all in favor.
All right. The motion passes. Thank you all. Can finally catch up on some time here. All right, I'm gonna clear all. All right, next up we have the we have some new undergraduate curriculum, and where is he? I've lost. Oh, there she is. Okay. And are you unmuted? There you go.
Hi. So we have one new minor, the esports minor, and then we have a variety of new course proposals that we approved at curricular committee. They're all available for you to look at, and I'm not going to go through all the individual courses, but if you have questions about them, you can let me know and I can look at my notes, or you can contact the departments directly.
And do we have anyone here who's sort of overseeing the esports minor? That's okay.
Yes, we have a waiver.
All right, let's see. Jeremy, are you unmuted? There you go.
We should be good now. Is that good?
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about the esports minor?
Yeah, sure. So this has been a year in the making. We've met with lots of industry and deciders and the like. I went to Vegas this last summer and met with a bunch of folks, VPs from Lay's and Totino's Pizza and all these random disparate corporations. But we also met with a lot of industry insiders that were into the infrastructure that surrounds esports altogether. So we're talking like people that create and design green screens, augmented reality companies, gaming companies altogether. And there's a big movement afoot. I'll just say this real quick. Huge movement afoot with esports everything. We're talking about $1 billion industry in less than 5-10 years. I mean, this thing's exploding like crazy. Lots of universities are starting to have this conversation. We'd be the first one on the West Coast to sport an esports minor. And so we've decided to house the minor in the business, the BCE, and it's going to be an esports management minor. And the idea is that we'd have, I think it's 28 hours altogether, but we'd have 2 core esports courses. One would be intro to esports management, and the second one would be contemporary and ethical issues in esports, so we can address things like misogyny and sexism and stuff in gaming. And then we're going to have a soft $399, I think, or $299, $399 designated for softs course for seminar type of opportunities to get industry insiders to maybe come in and help give the program some teeth. We've also made it interdisciplinary, so it's really nice as we partnered with like psychology, communication, EMDA, and so we have all these elective courses through multiple departments. So that's really nice. And then we've been journeying with, we're actually going to have a couple of esports teams, and that's pretty well known at this point. So I've been journeying with the administrative side of the house. And so we've all been in conversation kind of pushing this forward. And so we'd have a minor and actually an esports team on campus next year is the idea. So a lot of work has gone into this.
All right,
Are there any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, Brian had a question.
Hey, Jeremy. So I got 3 questions when looking at this. First, I know that this is kind of on the vanguard of, new things, but one, when I was reading the library's support system, it says that, it's new, but it also is, I think the quote is, it would be able to minimally support this. You are the primary person who would be teaching it. And from what I understand, you're also the incoming chair, right?
Yeah. So
there will be a course release there. And so I'm just wondering if this is like an undue burden on you as an individual, and as well as if there's any latent issues that may happen with BCE, because you'll no longer be able to teach some of the courses that you're already teaching.
So to answer that question, you probably have a few more questions too, but that one in particular, I have, okay. So, it's 2 per. And so right now I'm primarily teaching a lot of our business ethics classes. And Katie and Joan and I have all been in conversation about, at least 1 class or at a max 2 classes a year being set aside for esports proper. But we've also been in conversation with others. And I know that Precious Yamaguchi is here. So we've kind of reached out to her about helping out and teaching here and there too. So it's not just going to be me. And the whole idea is just kind of, I'll take it on at the beginning, but as soon as we start finding other content experts, we'll bring them in accordingly. But for now, I'm okay with doing the intro classes. And I think we have the room in the business school to do it.
Thanks. Melissa?
Yes. Yeah, because Brian mentioned the library thing and I wrote that. So we always say that we can minimally support something if we're not getting additional funding for something new, right? So that's sort of our boilerplate language, minimally supporting. If someone had said, we're going to give the library, $10,000 to buy stuff for this program, then it wouldn't be minimal supporting, right? But I can say that I've actually already been using some of my business funding to buy things for esports, just because it is something that students have been working on already, and it's such a growth area. So I feel confident that we can support it. It's just that's our language if we're not getting additional funding.
Thank you. Mark?
2 things. Do we have in-house any particular expertise in this? Or just a bunch of people who play games?
Jeremy?
Mark, I would say that there's really no people worldwide that have expertise in this, so to speak. I mean, by virtue of the fact that we're starting minors in programs like CERTS, UC Irvine has a certificate they're sporting, and Shenandoah University on the East Coast, there's a couple with bachelor's degrees, but right now that's why we're leaning it more on the management side, because, event planning, event management, these sorts of things are exactly what the industry needs right now. They don't necessarily need gamers, they need the support staff in play. And think like ESPN, Yahoo Sports, all these sorts of organizations. And just so you all know, if you don't know much about esports, there are stadiums full of people right now, 10, 20, 30,000 people that are cheering on 6 gamers at a time or 12 gamers at a time with huge screens like you'd see in like the Moda Center in Portland. And they're watching people play games, and people get uproarious and cheer and everything like that. So Google it if you get the chance, but it's growing, and it's growing fast. So I hope that answers part of that, Mark. I don't know if there's really any necessary content experts shy of gaming in particular.
So we do need to move on right now. This will come up next week, or 2 weeks from now. So we don't have to do any voting on this today, but if you could hold your questions and send them to Jeremy if they're regarding the new esports program, or if they're about other curriculum, you can direct them to Anna. But we need to move on now to the next agenda item, which is the report from Melissa.
Yes, so I have a PowerPoint that I'd like to go through. It is in the drive. Because time is limited, I'm going to try to go through fairly quickly so we can get to questions. But I'm going to call it up here for a second.
I think you have permission to share it.
To share? Okay, let's see if I can get that going here. All right, are you guys seeing my PowerPoint? Okay, so I'm going to go through this kind of fast because I want to get to questions that I'm sure everybody has, but I feel like it's important to get the actual proposal in context. So that's why I created this. There in the drive, there is a copy of this PowerPoint if you want to review it later. There's also an article that I think is very interesting that came out after we'd already been working on this, and it just kind of supports some of the conclusions. And then also there's a copy of the marked up bylaws that would be affected by these changes. So I'll jump right into it. On this first slide is this is not a student evaluation of teaching anymore. And that's probably the biggest takeaway from what I'm talking about today, is that it is not a student evaluation of teaching. It is a student learning experience survey. So we are no longer asking students to evaluate the teaching effectiveness of our instructors. We're asking them to give us feedback on what their learning experience has been in class. And this is something that grew directly out of the research that we did. And it really, that sort of concept, it's a paradigm shift, and really affected everything that we did in the task force that you're gonna see. So the one thing I wanted everybody to understand is what problems we're actually trying to solve. And so those of you who remember our report from last year would remember that we did identify a bunch of problems in the current student evaluation of teaching tool that we have. And we also did a lot of research just across the universities everywhere and across several decades, and to see what actually had been going on with student evaluations of teaching. And the research showed, and there are many reports that show that student evaluations of teaching are prone to bias. And this is bias for gender, for age, for racial background, for sexuality, and I mean, all kinds of things, right? So they're very prone to bias. We also found that through our primary research that we did, that our own teaching evaluation model had the potential to exacerbate that bias. And also, even more importantly, perhaps, is that it's very poorly understood by students. So students don't really understand what to do with those Likert scales and the questions that they're given. So however they're answering those questions, they're not necessarily accurate, right? So knowing those two things, the use of student evaluations of teaching at SOU for promotion and tenure becomes very problematic, because it can lead to discriminatory, hiring decisions and employment decisions. So the final thing was that instructors desperately need useful feedback if they're going to improve their teaching. And we wanted to ensure that they're actually getting that from the tool that we're using. So those are the problems we're trying to address: the bias and the fact that they're poorly understood by students, and also that instructors do need feedback on their teaching to improve. So what was the process we went through? Again, as you remember, we had a task force last year that did the primary and secondary research to identify problems with our student evaluation model, our student teaching evaluation model, and the questions that we had. We presented our report last year at the end of the year to Faculty Senate, and in that report were recommendations for a new student evaluation of teaching model, and also for a second task force made up of potentially some of the same people, but also new people, to really work on the questions. So that second task force was put together at the beginning of fall this year, and we researched the different student evaluation models that were used at other institutions. We also had a lot of consultation with the registrar and with the registration systems analyst, and of course also the senior executive for equity and diversity, since one of our main goals was to try to reduce bias in our student evaluations of teaching. So then, after reviewing all these different models that were out there and having conversations with all these stakeholders, we drafted some campus-wide questions and some bylaw revisions, or at least some places where the bylaw revisions have to happen in sample language. And then a process for programs to develop their own questions that would also be part of the new survey. I've already presented that to the chairs and directors, and then today I'm presenting that to you here at Faculty Senate. So I just want to call your attention to the U of O model, even though we are not adopting their model, but there are a lot of similarities. U of O also did a massive renovation of their student evaluations of teaching. They also are focusing on a student learning experience survey instead of a student evaluation of teaching. the key components of their model are student feedback on their learning experience, a self-reflection by instructors, and also peer review of instructors, so observations of teaching and things like that. Like I said, we're not using their model. Theirs is actually quite lengthy, and we didn't feel that it was right for us. But these three components, the peer review, the self-reflection, and the student feedback, are part of our model as well. So our proposal, what is our proposal that we're talking about today? So we're going to implement, we would like to implement a new student feedback survey with 5 all-campus questions. So that would be the same for everybody on campus, and then up to 5 optional program-related questions. So this is where programs could develop questions that would speak to the things that they most want to know about students in their classes, if the all-campus questions didn't address those specific things. Then a really important part of our model is that students need to have clear instructions on exactly how the questions will be used, on the anonymity, and on how to respond to the questions, and ideally time in class to complete them. So we can talk more about that later, but that in all the different universities that had implemented new models successfully, usually completing them in class was part of their model to improve response rates, and especially it might allow us to get rid of the grade hold, which was something that came up a lot in our surveys, is that a lot of people were very unhappy with the grade hold. So we might be able to get rid of that if we had time in class to complete them. So we also would like to remove the language around quantitative evaluation of student evaluations of teaching from promotion and tenure in the bylaws. That would go naturally with it, since these are going to be used differently. And then instead of having that quantitative, score where a certain percentage of your students responded in the top categories or whatever, instead of having that in the bylaws, instead we would replace it with language saying that that instructors will reflect on the feedback they get in their surveys in their yearly FPARs. So that student feedback would still kind of, through a different route, go into promotion and tenure. It just would be used differently, right? So we'd be expecting instructors to respond to the feedback they get from students in their yearly FPARs, and that way we would be able to see how they were incorporating student feedback and using it to improve teaching. So the actual questions. The goals of our questions are primarily to provide useful feedback to instructors about student learning in their classrooms. And so this is the most important thing, and this is sort of the lens through which all the questions should be seen. They also will provide programs with useful feedback about the student learning in their actual program if it's desired, right? Because they can do program questions that are related to program learning outcomes if they want to. And so that this new model will allow for that if it's desired. Chairs will get a snapshot of the student learning experience in the classrooms of individual instructors. And then also we have one question that's about cultural capacity, or we were asked to write a question that would deal with cultural capacity, because there is a House Bill 2864 that requires us to do an assessment of the sort of atmosphere and inclusiveness on campus. And so we've tried to address that, and I can answer more questions about that later, or Suresh could talk about that a lot more as well. So our 5 questions, and I'd like to say that I have these sort of titles on these slides, and that's just context for you. These would not be on the actual survey. So it wouldn't say question 1 student effort. That's just for Senate to understand the sort of the context of these questions. But the first question is about student effort. We found through all of our research that it's really important for students to think about their effort as context for how they answer their questions. And it also gives chairs a lot of contextual information about these responses that they're reading, right? So they know if a student has said a lot of negative things about the course, but they also didn't make an effort in the course, that tells you one thing. And if they made a huge effort in the course and still had a very negative experience, that tells you something different, right? So student effort we felt was really important to have in there, and that was something that was reflected in most of the models we saw from other institutions as well. So the impact on learning, and this one, the question was about what aspect of the course had the greatest positive impact on your learning. So this is the positive, right? This is where the student gets to say what was great about this course. And you'll notice it says choose one and it's starred. It's possible that we're in negotiations with our current vendor, and it's possible that we'll be able to change this to a select all that apply. Right now, it's not like that. So right now, you can't do that with our current tool that we would use, but we're working on getting that functionality added. So it's possible this would become a select all. instead of a choose one. So that's why it starred here. The current model doesn't allow it, but hopefully we could in the future. So this is where students would pick something and then give feedback specifically on how, say the organization of the course or the readings or something like that was a positive impact on their learning experience. So then we also have the flip side, right? So what aspect of the course needed improvement to support learning or to improve the learning experience? Again, this is one where right now it says choose one, but this would hopefully become a select all that apply if the vendor can add that functionality for us. And again, these also give the student space to explain their answer, right? So this isn't just you check one and then move on. There's a place to explain what exactly your feedback is speaking to. Then we have our question about atmosphere and inclusivity. And like I said, this is one that we were asked to add because it's required by the House bill. And right now, this question is, how did the atmosphere and inclusiveness of the class contribute to your learning experience? And then how could it be improved? So this is where the students would talk about things like respect or tolerance of diverse opinions or things like that. Really, whatever to them was the most important aspect of the atmosphere and inclusiveness. So this is something that some of the feedback we got was that this would be very helpful for chairs to kind of zero in on places where there might be problems or not. And then we have our last question allows for additional comments. So this would be where, especially if we weren't able to add that functionality of the select all that apply in the earlier questions, the students could return here in this additional comments and talk about things they weren't able to mention before, like assignments, organization, feedback, engagement, or other things that affected them. And in the sort of preamble instructions that the students would be given before they do the surveys, they would be given a lot of very specific directions about like what is appropriate feedback and what isn't. So this is where we would be careful to make sure we were not allowing them to, make personal comments about, the professor's looks or age or race or things like that. So those are the 5 campus questions. And then the programs would then customize as they choose to. So they would add either quantitative or qualitative questions. So they could add more qualitative questions about student learning outcomes. And I got some great ones already from the environmental ed program. And then they also, if they wanted to have quantitative questions, they could add those in here. The task force or a new committee would then review those questions to make sure that they minimize bias before adding them into the survey. And then once the surveys are done by the students, the chairs would then decide how much review of student feedback is needed. So one concern that was raised early on was, how is this going to be more work for chairs? And we felt that the chairs are going to know which new faculty maybe need to have a lot, their student surveys looked at a lot more closely. And if they're getting a lot of positive feedback in other realms from instructors, they maybe can, skim those more quickly. So it'll be up to the chairs who know their faculty to decide if they need a deep, close reading or if a quick skim is enough. And then of course, because assessing teaching effectiveness is still important, the chairs will use other methods for assessing teaching effectiveness, such as, the grades that the students have, direct reports from students, peer observations, and other things. And then the survey itself would be used to provide feedback to instructors on the student learning experience. And that's, really the big difference here that I'd like to emphasize is that we're focusing not on teaching effectiveness, because all of our research in the article that's in the drive speaks to this. Students aren't good at assessing or evaluating or scoring teaching effectiveness. What they're very good at doing is giving feedback on their own learning experience. So we're saying, let's take this evaluation of teaching effectiveness out of their hands, because they're not really good at doing it anyway. And let's have them do what they're really good at, which is telling us about their learning experience. And because we want to know about that. So that's the focus of the new tool. And then I just wanted to reiterate that the new surveys really can't be compared to the old evaluations because they're serving a really different function. So the old model, first of all, doesn't provide valid data for lots of different reasons, and we can talk about that more if you want. But because of the bias involved in the old evaluations, that whatever conclusions or scores or benchmarks are drawn from those old evaluations are also going to be prone to bias. The new surveys are not going to be providing a benchmark or a score in the same way at all. Instead, they're just going to be one piece of a larger picture of the teaching that's happening in the classroom and the learning experience of the students. And our goal, again, is more useful feedback, not more accurate scoring of teaching. So the new survey itself obviously will need to be assessed and may evolve over time. The questions may need to be adjusted and changed, and programs may want to do several different versions of questions over time. And so we propose that there should be a new Senate committee that will be in charge of reviewing the program questions when they're submitted, and also to gather feedback on the new survey and to see how it's working for people, and to make questions to make changes to the questions as might be needed. And then if desired, this was something that came out of our first report. We talked a lot about midterm formative assessment surveys that could be done for formative assessment in midterm. So some institutions like U of O have adopted campus-wide a midterm survey that can be used for formative assessment. And if we wanted to do something like that, the new Senate committee could develop a model for that as well. So what's our roadmap? This term, we're proposing our new model. And then once all campus questions are approved, programs would then submit their program questions if they have them and if they want to. And then in the fall, we would need to review all the program questions and approve their addition to the survey. And then the bylaws revisions would also need to be submitted and approved by Senate. And then by the end of fall, we would hope to have the surveys distributed to students and feedback given back to instructors. And then the sort of ongoing stage, the final stage, is for program chairs to review evaluation and respond to the self-reflection in the FPARS. And then for the new Senate committee to continue to assess the survey as a tool for gathering feedback and, and the effectiveness of the questions that are being asked. So I went by this really fast because I know we're really pressed for time, and you have all these materials to review later, and our task force would be glad to take more questions later, but I think do I have time for a few today?
Sure. Before I call on Anna, who's had her hand up for a while, I may have misunderstood, but I thought we were hoping to get a vote on the bylaws this term. So you're wanting to hold off until fall to do that?
Oh, I just wasn't sure if we had enough meetings left to get it done, but I think if we could get it done, sure, that'd be great.
Okay, yeah. So the outline on the timeline, best case scenario, I mean, we may not be able to get to it, but this is my hope, is that this was an informational session, and then the official submission of bylaws to Senate would happen in 2 weeks, and then the 2-week rule on those would allow us to vote on the change in bylaws at our last Senate session. So that's what I'm hoping we would be able to do. But the Constitution Committee needs to look at those bylaws over the next 2 weeks to see if that's doable. I'm going to call on Anna.
Hi. So I had 2 quick questions. The first one, is there any way that we could see the questions that environmental ed submitted, just to give our department some idea of what they're asking? Because we were discussing it, but we didn't really have any ideas yet. So I think that might lead us, give us an idea to start off of.
Yeah, and I meant to actually send those to Andrew today because I just got them. Okay. But I thought they were great. So they just had 3 questions, and they all were about, really focused on their program outcomes. And I thought they were terrific. So I asked if I could share them, and they said yes. So I'll send those to Andrew, and he can just pop them in the drive.
Okay.
Sure.
And then my second question was, I know sometimes when I'm reading my evaluations now and they say, what could be improved in the class or what didn't you like, some of them write nothing as like nothing, I liked the class. Now, are we hoping that they will not answer that and that they will give us feedback, or would that fall under the other option if that was what they wanted to give feedback as?
Do you mean
in questions 2 and 3? I'm kind of
one is like, what was the best thing, what was the worst
right
thing? Yeah.
Like if they let's say didn't think something was the worst, or are we kind of forcing them to give us a real answer?
I think they could write other and nothing. And someone from another program asked me about this. They're like, students will just say nothing, or I'm like, well, they do that now.
Right.
So that's not a change. So some students are not going to take it seriously. There's always going to be a certain portion that won't take it seriously. And hopefully the instructions we give, telling students how important their feedback is to improving the course will help alleviate that a little bit. But yeah, I think I think they could pick other and write nothing if they really wanted to.
Okay.
Thank you, Anna. Any other quick questions before we move on to the next topic? All right, well, I would encourage everyone to please just, the chairs have all seen this, so I imagine some chairs are already bringing it up in faculty meetings, but if they aren't, please bring this to your colleagues. The feedback I'm hearing from everyone who's seen it so far has been very positive. I think this task force has done tremendous work. And I think a lot of people are very excited about this. So I think it'd be great to be able to get moving on this so that we can start using the system in the fall. Thank you very much, Melissa.
Sure.
Next up, we have with us David Bethel. In the drive, you have some recommendations from the Faculty Personnel Committee. Those recommendations were vetted by Advisory Council, and we gave a little bit of feedback. And so David is bringing those forward. So David, do you want to give us a little sort of summary of your process in Faculty Personnel Committee and what your recommendations were?
Sure. Yeah, and thanks for having me. I guess the main thing is that we were brought forward the question of changes to promotion and tenure in terms of accommodations that might be made in relationship to COVID-19, as well as trying to think proactively about situations down the road that might come up as well. So that if we make any changes that are, for example, to the bylaws, that we're doing so in a manner that is going to be able to be flexible and responsive to future situations. And so we wanted to address as best we could at this moment what we know of are changing in terms of things like faculty's abilities to participate in scholarship, challenges with initiating new scholarship, challenges in terms of venues of disseminating scholarship, things like that. But our intent really is to do it in a flexible way and in a way in which we don't know all of the possible ramifications, and that we don't just have a limited set of these three things can be available for accommodation, but rather sort of opening things up a bit more and allowing faculty members, especially in terms of reporting on in their applications for promotion and or tenure, to indicate how the impacts of COVID-19 affected a particular element within their research, especially. But I think we focused primarily in three main areas. So if you sort of scroll through that document, the first one is a bylaws amendment, which is related to the tenure clock. And there was language already existing for automatic one-year extensions for given situations, primarily individual situations or related to an individual faculty member, related to pregnancy, birth, adoption, death of spouse or partner, and some other situations like that. And we wanted to include new language that is opening this up for more collective challenging situations. And so that's what we've done there, and added in language that hopefully has some flexibility to it, with the idea that, let's see, that we have a series of things that are listed, and things that might come up that are not listed can also still be counted. It might need to be a resolution passed by Faculty Senate if some situation arises that we cannot foresee, enabling then this automatic one-year extension of the tenure clock. One thing that should be noted is it's not in the direct document that I'm providing to you, because there is no change to the bylaws in relationship to this, but sections B and then C further outline some elements of these tenure clock extensions, and outlines also that it is ultimately at the faculty members' discretion whether or not they want to make use of these. We've heard a lot of feedback that it's great to have this flexibility, but a particular individual faculty member may actually not want to delay going up for tenure because they feel they were able to be well prepared for that, and then they want to get the additional security that comes with having a tenured position. So there's no change in regard to that, and that language was already existing. The second main bullet point is related to temporary adjustments to university-wide promotion and tenure expectations. And I separated those out into teaching, scholarship, and service. And here trying to address the various things that we are able to foresee as issues that are coming up. I think maybe time-wise, I won't go through these one by one, but as questions come up, I'm happy to address any of those. I note obviously that you just passed a resolution regarding the teaching evaluations, student teaching evaluations for spring and summer. I did want to note that we brought up a little bit of, or there was some discussion so that we were in fact including winter as another possible optional inclusion of those evaluations. Some members were feeling that just the end of term stressors in terms of that were affecting students as well as everyone else could have a negative impact as well. So that's why we chose to include that in our recommendation as well. Let's see, other things. And then the last major bullet point, number 3, is then the allowing or extending the invitation to programs to be able to make further adjustments to their temporarily to promotion and tenure expectations. Particularly thinking about, we were trying to wrestle with the idea of numbers of numbers of scholarship activities, for example, that may be dictated by an individual program. Some programs have those in a very codified numerical fashion, some don't. So we did not feel it really our place to recommend a specific reduction campus-wide in terms of that, but to allow for individual programs for P&T applications coming in through 2020, so 2020 to 2021, programs could choose to reduce that by some amount if they so desired. As well as maybe the programs are going to be closer to knowing what types of changes are happening scholarship-wise and conference-wise and those sorts of things. So if they wanted to be able to be recognizing alternate forms of dissemination or publication that are happening in their fields, they may be able to do so. Something that likely will come up as a question or as a challenge is the timeline on that, which was that we put in this June 12th deadline as a way of, it's the end of of our term now, so that we would be able to have everything approved, so that anyone going up for promotion or tenure coming next year will have at the beginning of fall term know what sort of rubric they're going under before they complete their applications, which would be due at the end of the fall term typically, or beginning of the winter term. And then just saying that if there are impacts that are expected to reach beyond the more temporary status, that programs can simply put forward revisions to their more permanent faculty performance expectations for us to review. So I'll leave it at that as far as my sort of preamble to here, and happy to take questions or be more specific on anything.
Thanks, David. First question is from Brian.
Yeah.
Hey, David. So the question, have you guys discussed, and I know this was brought up at chairs, and I know Sue's aware of this from the chairs, is there are some of my colleagues that are due for a colleague evaluation, and within the bylaws, I think it's within 1 year, and I've had at least 2 colleagues, 3 that will be applying for promotion next year. And they were planning on getting it in spring term. Obviously, that's not happening, and we really don't know what's going to happen in fall. So has there been any discussion on how we approach colleague evaluations, or what FPC's recommendation is for that?
Sue wants to respond to David.
I just want to correct Brian. It's 2 years. It's within 2 years.
Okay.
Yes.
But what if it's not within 2 years? What if there hasn't been one within 2 years?
Then I'd hurry up and try to get that done now, or make it the first priority that person has going into fall term.
I understand that, and that's what I've approached as chair, but I mean, what happens if we don't come back in fall?
Well, I think there are ways well, we're coming back in fall in one form or another. And we might have to get creative and see what it's like to actually sit in on a class virtually or in some kind of hybrid way. we can do it. We just have to time it right.
All right, I know we're running out of time, but there's a whole bunch of other questions that I might have to address separately.
David, did you want to add anything to Sue's comment there?
Not really. We have not, as a committee, spent much time focusing on that specific issue.
Okay.
But we'd be happy to look at that further.
So just on the issue of time, because obviously we only have 5 minutes left of this session. I know that one of the things we do want to address rather quickly is get a vote again on bylaws by the end of the term. So just as with the bylaws on the end of the student evaluation process and replacement with a different process, these need to go to the Constitution Committee quickly, in hopes that we could also bring those back next week to introduce them to begin the 2-week rule, so that we could vote on the bylaws changes. That being said, a lot of these other questions we can continue to discuss. So I can put some additional time on our next agenda to have more question and answer, Brian, if there's other stuff. But also if folks have questions that we can maybe prepare for, feel free to send questions my way that I can pass on to David, that we might be able to address in a more focused way. Any other questions right now? I see Kimball waving his hand. He can't raise the blue hand because he's a co-host. There you go.
Hi, I know this is going to be kind of throwing a monkey wrench, but I just have to ask, there's a global question. It comes into play in some of our task force as well. We're contemplating a very new way of getting student feedback on our teaching, and I actually am totally supportive of that. But there's this rather big effect on how we've evaluated our faculty for promotion and tenure decisions, and it's actually even kind of magnified now, or will be, for our instructors when we put so much of the focus of their job on their teaching. I guess I'm not asking that we have to have quantitative measurements of teaching, but I am concerned that, you know, we might need to think carefully about how we are going to really come to judgment, say as a program personnel committee, as a program chair, and so forth and so on, all the way up to the faculty personnel committee and the provost. How will we assess teaching? I'm a little concerned that nothing like the current paradigm is going to easily flex into this new teaching evaluation. So that's really melding feedback on the last 2 presentations, but I wanted to throw that out there.
Sure, and as a reminder, programs, if a program determines they need quantitative information to do that evaluation, a program could include quantitative questions. I don't know if Melissa wants to say anything else about that.
Yeah, absolutely. But that would be a tool really for the chair, right? So the chair would then, that would give them a heads up on whatever issue it was that they are concerned about, right? But that score still wouldn't be included in the PNT packet, because our whole point was to kind of get rid of that quantitative scoring by students of faculty, right? So the program could definitely include some stuff that would tip them off that there might be a problem. And then that would be something that would then need to be addressed with observation and peer, feedback and things like that probably. But yes, the programs can definitely make quantitative questions that they add to, that will kind of give them something like that to use.
I just want to clarify, I'm a math person, but I wasn't really hungering for quantitative. As a matter of fact, I'm really more concerned about people above the level of a program evaluating folks from different programs, and ultimately on faculty personnel committee and our provost in different divisions. Somehow we have to give guidance as to how we're supposed to evaluate a person's teaching performance, dedication, you pick the words. And I'm not saying we need that to be quantitative at all. I just think we need to be mindful of the fact that, for better, but much more for worse, we have hung a lot of our teaching evaluation of faculty on these very flawed student teaching evaluation instruments. And I think at the very least it makes it more work for us, but I just want to make sure we define the work and push people to be thinking about the right things and get the feedback they need to make the decisions.
And there's already quite a bit in the bylaws about the teaching part of the P&T packet. And so there's all kinds of things that instructors can include that the faculty personnel committee can look at. And the chair would be commenting on the person's teaching, and so would the colleagues in their colleague evaluation. So I think there will be a lot in there that could be used. What'll be gone is a simple score, right?
We're pretty much out of time, actually. I do want to bring Lee. I'm just going to call you real quick for announcements and new business. This falls under that category. Lee had a quick comment.
Thank you. The University Studies Committee asked that I announce at Faculty Senate that we are no longer accepting template applications for the current academic year. We're finalizing the review of those that have been received for the year, and we'll be bringing our final list to you soon with our final report for the year, but it's just too narrow of a window given the amount of time that you have. I'll be pulling the templates down. We've had a problem with them being PDF fillable, expandable, so we'll be working on making sure the expandable part is working. So if you're in need of a template over the summer, please reach out and I'll make sure to give you something if they're not currently up and redesigned.
Thank you, Lee. One of the things I wanted to note too that was a part of David's work in the FPC that I don't think may not have been included in his comments, that they did recommend a change to the form for FPARS this year. And so that is being implemented in Activity Insight, so that in each area, teaching, service, and scholarship, there will be a prompt to ask you to record any impacts that COVID-19 has had on your teaching, on your service, or your scholarship. So just yep, Jody says it's done. So do look for that. Any other announcements or new business before we adjourn? Not seeing any hands. Well, I thank you all. I apologize that this felt so crammed. I know we have a lot of important stuff to look at, so please do pass on the last two items to all your colleagues and make sure you're having these discussions so that in our remaining Senate meetings, and we have two more before I am done with this job. So please, let's get as much done as we can, and thank you all. I'll mute you all so you can all say goodbye to each other.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.